All right, let me go through the whole process of what happens when you die, and we'll cover those things in it. When you die, you become aware in another virtual reality. So your body dies and you wake up, sort of like we're no longer in Kansas. You're in a different place. And that is called the transition reality, and it's another virtual reality. You tend to have a little anxiety at that point, particularly if you come with fear, like, oh, is this hell or is this heaven? So there's some anxiety with it, or maybe it was a traumatic accident that you weren't planning to die, it just suddenly overcame you. But in any case, you will run into something, there'll be some strategy there to help you relax and let go of your past life. So it could be the light at the end of the tunnel, all the things that the people who have the near-death experiences do. That's kind of the beginning of this pathway. Often there's the light and you get this intuition, that would be the larger conscious system sending you a message, move toward the light. So you do, and then as you do, you find, Aunt Susie and Uncle Fred, there to greet you, and because they passed on 10 years earlier, and they're smiling and they're happy and they're obviously having a good time, so it couldn't be too bad there. So these things are done just to put you at ease, make you feel relaxed, and let go. Your previous life begins to fade immediately, just like dreams do. You wake up from a dream, the instant you wake up, it's perfectly clear. 30 seconds later, it's a little fuzzy. A minute later, it's a lot fuzzy, and 5 minutes later, what was that dream about? I only remember a couple of major things, but all the detail disappears. So that's the way your memory of the last life just begins to fade like a dream. Now, for the average person who has very little or no knowledge about the larger system, they go through a process that is basically designed to give them a chance to decompress and let go. So they're told to do non-functional things because you're just buying them time to decompress. Oh yes, welcome, you're here, Uncle Fred and Aunt Sally, they tell you, and then they say, well, we're busy, we need to go, we'll see you a little bit later, and they take off. That's the larger conscious system playing Uncle Fred and Aunt Sally. Okay, so then they'll say, let's see, what's your name? Oh, okay, over here, and there'll be a line of 15 people there, and you go stand in the line, and that takes a while. And if you finally do make it all the way up to the line, then they tell you a little something, or they tell you to go someplace else. And all it is just keeping you from getting into a fit of uncertainty, giving you things to do. Meanwhile, the old reality is disappearing, gone. All the people are nice and everything seems to be friendly. You're not hungry or cold or wet, and it's all okay. And then eventually you kind of feel like, well, what should I do next? What's going on? Kind of what's happening here? And somebody will come approach you, and pretty soon you'll be planning your next incarnation, where you're going to go back and what it is you need to do. If you're just new in the business of being a consciousness and going into virtual reality, if you're new at the business, it's a jump in, jump out. There's not a lot of planning. And just go back in and you grab a body and you have another experience. Because what you need is experience, not a particular experience. If you've been around that block enough times that this part of you is developed, but this part not so much, you want to work on that part. So now you pick a certain kind of experience that you want to go back into that has the probability of helping you develop that part that's weak. You may even have people that you go back with because you really bring good stuff out in each other. You work well as a team. So now you may be incarnating with other people you've incarnated with before. Okay, if you've been around a whole lot more than that, you may go back almost with a scripted thing. You're going to do these things. You're going to help these people in this way. And you have a mission when you get here. So it goes from no scripting at all, jump in, jump out, to reasonably scripted, and everything in between. Okay, so that's what's going on. So then you decide to go. Now what actually has happened here is that when you die, that avatar, okay, the avatar that you were, you know, Joe Jones. Joe Jones' avatar is dead. Joe Jones, the consciousness, is not dead. The avatar is dead. Joe Jones, the consciousness, is alive in a new reality frame. That avatar is what we call a free will awareness unit. And where that came from is that you had this individuated unit of consciousness, piece of the larger conscious system. It took a piece of itself, a piece that has no memory, no intellect, just the quality. It's a piece that contains the quality of that individuated unit of consciousness, all the things they've learned, you know, the fear they've gotten rid of and all, it's got that quality. It's that free will awareness unit then, with only the quality that logs on for the next incarnation. That's why it starts with no memory, no intellectual part, but it starts with all the quality that it's earned before. So the quality is cumulative. Every time around, whatever quality you earn, you come back in at that level with that quality. All the quality you lose because you've de-evolved, you come back in with less the next time. So that's kind of the way it goes. So what about the avatar, is what you asked. That avatar, as soon as the avatar dies, that free will awareness unit starts to reintegrate with the individuated unit of consciousness. So think of it as a partition. You know how we partition hard drives? We take this much of the space and we say only these things go on in here and this other space is separate with different rules that apply to it. That's the way it is. So you have an IUOC and it's a partition, and that's the free will awareness unit. None of the intellectual part. All right, when that avatar dies, that partition gets taken down. The partition gets taken down, and now as that person is standing in line and just kind of working through the process of forgetting and becoming bored, that person now is no longer any representative of that avatar. It's now a representative of the individuated unit of consciousness. Partition's down, that free will awareness is reintegrated. All right, that individuated unit of consciousness takes all the lifetimes, the last one along with all the rest of them, and looks at them as a whole and says, what can I learn from all the lessons I've had? Because looking at the whole is more powerful than just looking at one individual one. So it looks through the whole set. And then when it does, it says, well, I'm kind of weak over here. That's when that individual gets his talk and he says, well, you're a little weak over here. He's talking about the IUOC now, not the avatar. So then they plan for something else. So that avatar basically just gets reabsorbed into the individuated unit of consciousness that it was to begin with. It doesn't exist anymore. It's gone. But all the information that defined that particular avatar is still there in this collection of lifetimes. So everything that avatar was, did, said, thought, felt, whatever, it's all collected here in this collection of lifetimes, of experience packets. So it's still there. And that's what defines dead Uncle Fred when the medium comes in and calls him up because Aunt Susie has never been quite the same since his passing, and she has some issues she needs to get rid of. That database that defines Uncle Fred precisely is the constraints that the largest conscious system used then to interact with Aunt Susie. So that's the way that works. So the avatar itself just gets reabsorbed. It disappears, but all the history of it, all the data describing it is there forever. When you go back and look at past lives, you're going back and looking in a database. You're not going back and looking at beings that have free will and are still making choices. That's done. Now you're looking at a database. But this database is so complete that you can interact with it. You can talk to it. You can go back and change things. The database is laid out in terms of probability. See, Uncle Fred may have done any number of things given a stimulus. He's most likely to have done this, second most likely to have done that, third most likely to have done this. So you can go into these databases and like you're in, not seeing a movie, but you're in the movie. You can actually go into them and do what if analysis, change something. All right, Uncle Fred is going to change something. What would have happened if I'd have married Sally instead of Susie? Well, he can go back and look at all the probabilities of where that would have taken him. It's just probable. Didn't actually happen. But you can go through that process. All that information's in the database of how Susie now would have interacted and he would have interacted with those interactions, just in probability. So that's the kind of database it is. So the avatar itself, Joe Jones, is absorbed into its IUOC, individuated unit of consciousness, and it basically is no more as far as a free will operating consciousness. But all these data's there in this individuated units of consciousness of which he originated.